May I have your attention, please? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the 23rd Annual Edith Fox King Lecture at San Antonio College. The lecture series honors Edith Fox King, who taught journalism and advised publications at this college from 1958 to 1968. King was a pioneer in scholastic journalism and a nationally recognized speaker at high school and college conferences. Since its beginning in 1978, the series has featured 18 speakers who were Pulitzer Prize winners in photojournalism, reporting, editorial writing, and editorial cartooning. We want to recognize special guests and friends of the Journalism Photography Department this evening. Dr. Robert Ziegler is the Vice President of our college, Dean Luciano Salinas, and John Hammond of Public Relations. Students who have been selected for the 2000 Urban Journalism Workshop, please stand and be recognized.
Look at him.
These young people will spend 2 weeks between June 18th through 30th learning about newspapers. Former workshop students, please stand and be recognized. These students have survived the 2-week boot camp and still remain interested in journalism or photography as a career option. Members of the San Antonio College Explorers Post, please stand and be recognized. Each year we recognize award winners in state, regional, and national competition. Journalism instructor Marianne Odom will present the awards.
And I'm her assistant.
Good evening. We're very thankful that the Ranger has collected awards again this year in national and state competitions. These are for fall 1998 and spring 1999. In fall 1998, Stacy Young was the editor, and she is now a student at Southwest Texas. And in spring '99, Mary Hydrick was editor, and she's still with us. We were named a top 10 finalist by the Associated Collegiate Press and the Five Times. Just recently, about a week ago, we learned that the Texas Associated Press managing editors has named the Ranger as the #2 college or university newspaper in Texas. We've also been notified that Region 8 of the Society of Professional Journalists has recognized the Ranger, but that award won't be given until a workshop in Austin, May 13th, so we don't know what it is yet. But 2 former editors and our student SBJ president are planning to attend, and we'll get it. Then in community college competition, we have awards for the Ranger from the Texas Community College Journalism Association. This organization also honored the Forthright magazine for fall '98, which was published as 4 inserts in the Ranger. Our students took home the Sweepstakes Award for accumulating the most awards, and we competed in Division I, which is for community colleges with more than 6,000 students. For the individual awards, I'd like to call the students up one by one, and I'll present all the awards to them. So I want to remind you, most of the students who've worked so hard this semester, your work hasn't been entered yet, so you'll have to come back next year. Okay, first, would Mary Hydrick come forward?
Yay.
Okay, to Stacy Young and Mary Hydrick, second place in general excellence for the Ranger.
Go ahead and give them. I'll just shake her hand.
Oh, okay. We're not very well choreographed, I'm sorry. Also to the Ranger staff, first place in layout and design. Third place in headlines. And to Mary individually, third place in feature writing for a feature on internet moments. for Stacy, who isn't with us. You want to just take Stacy's for her. She won second place for the magazine cover. Swing Back in Time was the story on swing dancing. Stacy won first place in magazine journalism story for a story on morbid curiosity. She won first place in editorial writing for an editorial something about the board bickering.
Something like that.
And Vincent Davis.
Yay, Vincent.
Yay. Vincent was our design editor this spring, and for 98-99, he won first place in cartoon and second place in cartoon, second place in advertising, and honorable mention for photographic illustration. Okay, and Jennifer Cowles, I guess Jennifer's not with us. Mary, I'm going to accept these for Jennifer. Jennifer Cowles was our sports editor in the spring of '99, and she won first place for sports news and first place in in-depth reporting, an award we're very proud of. And Benjamin Olivo has been with us. Ben is our current web editor, and he works at the Express News, so he's probably still at work. He won second place in news writing.
Ben also has accepted an internship in Phnom Penh, Cambodia for the summer. Wow. First one.
And also for our opinion editor for Fall '98, Cherie Ortman won for a column on Latino family values. You have a big stack, Mary. And Chip Hansen won third place for a magazine story on water from the rock.
We're almost done.
Felix Diaz. Felix was a photographer, and he won first place in magazine photography. Fernando Sanchez. Okay, Fernando was an illustrator for us, and he won second place for non-photographic illustration, and he won second place in magazine layout. And our last award is Todd Heath. He was a photographer for us in the spring, and he won third place in news photo.
Now to recognize the new staff members for the Ranger for the fall semester. Staff members, please come forward when your name is announced and remain standing. And please hold your applause until all have been recognized. The editor will be Melissa Smith. Managing editor, Josie Garcia. Yeah. News editors will be Tiffany Chesterman and Michael Harrell. The features editor will be Mark Flatt. The sports and health editor will be Sean Morris. Our photographers will be Cynthia Sparza and Anthony Padilla. Our artist illustrator will be Jason Ramos. Our production manager will be Laura Jesse. This is the Ranger staff for the fall. And now to announce the scholarship winners in journalism, Instructor Irene Oscar.
I didn't find anybody to help me, so Marianne's volunteering here at the last second. We spend a bunch of our time sitting at computers, so this is our exercise for the evening. We'll just have students keep walking up and down. Okay, we have two Society of Professional Journalists winners. The first goes to Laura Jesse. Oh, and while Ms. Jesse is up here, I should announce that she's also receiving a San Antonio Light Endowment Scholarship. Make her come back up again. Our second Society of Professional Journalists Scholarship goes to Melissa Smith. The next category of scholarships is the Janelle MacArthur Endowment. Our first goes to Jason Ramos, who was absent a few minutes ago, but I saw him outside. I know he's around here somewhere. He's just hiding. Our second goes to Sean Morris. Our third goes to Mark Flatt. Also receiving a Janelle MacArthur Endowment Scholarship is Josie Garcia. Okay, while she works her way up here. Josie is also receiving a very special scholarship to this department. She is also our recipient for the fall semester of the W.B. Doherty Memorial Scholarship presented by the Friends of Journalism. And our final Janelle MacArthur Endowment Scholarship goes to James Tomlinson, who afraid could not be with us this evening. Our next category is the San Antonio Light Endowment Scholarship, one very special to me. I was a refugee of the San Antonio Light when they closed, but I think I landed in a pretty good place. Our first goes to Tiffany Chesterman. A second San Antonio Light Endowment Scholarship goes to Michael Harrell. Also receiving a Light Scholarship is Cynthia Esparza. And finally, Ms. Laura Jesse. Sorry. I want you guys to know that I'm real picky about who we give those scholarships to. Okay, and finally, a little bit out of the ordinary for the Edith Fox King lecture. I got a little bit of bad news this morning that one of the students from the workshop that we had selected for an ACCD scholarship, there are 3 presented each summer to students completing the workshop, had decided that he was not going to attend San Antonio College after all. So we seized the moment and decided we'd reassign it to one of our other students who came out of the workshop. And I'm really sorry she's not here because we decided we would reassign it to Cynthia Esparza, who was in the, Josie, help me, what year? 1998 Urban Journalism Workshop. It's a 2-week program we have for high school students. So we may have to reconsider. Oh, okay. at 7 o'clock. I'm introducing the speaker, so I'll just move right along to that. Our featured lecturer tonight is Rodolfo Gonzalez, a photojournalist with the Rocky Mountain News. He was very special to us here since he was a student here, 1987 to 1989. He served on staff, I guess, 3 semesters as a photographer and his 4th semester as photo editor while I was editor of the Ranger. So we go back a long way. It's been a lot of fun watching his development and progress in his career. I've always had a lot of faith in him. He used to come in each morning to the newsroom, sit down at my desk and say, Irene, let's go to Nicaragua. Or the next week it'd be, Irene, let's go to Afghanistan. Wherever anything in the world was going on, Rudy knew about it and he wanted to be in the middle of it. I can't say that I've always agreed with his method of getting to where he is today, but it's been interesting to watch. And we're very proud of him. He started his professional career at the San Antonio Light as an intern. He went on to Shreveport. Sorry, I can't remember the name of your paper there. Worked at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Providence Journal-Bulletin before joining the Rocky Mountain News in 1995. He is part of the staff that won for the April 20th, 1999 shootings at Columbine High School. I have to tell you that he visited us last summer, brought with him some of his work that he shared with us, particularly his trip to Sudan, that some of you may have seen in the Ranger. I think it was our April 7th issue. So next one's in the department, if anybody would like to see it. And told us then that he didn't include any of the photos from Columbine in his portfolio because he didn't care to be remembered for that. So it's a somewhat bittersweet award, but well-deserved. So I give you Rodolfo Gonzalez.
Wow. Take a look around the room, and I can't believe I'm actually on the other side of the podium. As a student, nearly 10 years ago, I attended several lectures like this and never dreamed that I would have the opportunity to come up and speak, especially after a Pulitzer. All things. I was looking at the list of photojournalists that have come before me with Pulitzers, and it's incredible list of incredibly talented people. Just before we go in, to show you a slideshow, I'd like to let you know that the Pulitzer win was not me only. It was a staff of 19. 1 director, 3 photo editors, and 15 very hard-working photographers. I've never met another photographer that wasn't really hardworking. That's something. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you the show that we put together. The Pulitzer Prize entry, the team entry, was compiled of 20 images. That's the maximum amount of images that you can enter in the Pulitzer Prize. But what I'll show you this evening is pretty much a large body of work that we did. And I'd be happy to take any questions afterwards. So, middle.
So, it's on. It's microphone on. You got it? Okay, let's see. This was working earlier.
Run in another Gonzalez to help.
Okay. Went to standby. So hold on. it's kind of hard to follow that. Wasn't too sure what exactly I wanted to say in the process of showing this work. The cliche, unfortunately, I don't even think is nearly what I think it deservedly is. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I think it goes beyond that. I think, how do you find words for feelings and emotions? It's impossible. For me, it is. It is now. The work we did was, again, we, as a staff, we struggled through an incredible amount of grief in just a few days, and continued for the next year, following something like this through in our community, for the community. And I think, the images we made, we struggled to make on a daily basis. I think the first day, all of us responded sort of like the community and law enforcement. It was purely adrenaline, purely shock, which unfortunately turned the next few days following into pure emotions. There wasn't a moment in our photo lab that somebody wasn't crying at one end of the light table. There wasn't a day that I didn't go by where I wasn't literally trying to focus through my own tears. Thank goodness autofocus has come a long way. But at the same time, it's not nearly. It's obviously not nearly the beginning of, or it couldn't even begin to touch on the pain and suffering that the family and the students and the community as a whole went through that day and the days that followed. I think what we experienced as professionals was only a small fraction of that. And I think of that, and I try to find strength in that and do my job, and with the help of a lot of people, a lot of other photographers, a lot of family members, my mom, my brother, find strength through them and courage through them, and friends that just say, what you do will one day be looked at and earmarked as not so much a piece of work, but almost like a study, almost as though, the witnesses that we are and the documenting that we do, it's something that cannot be redone in the future, or cannot be looked at in the future and said, boy, I wish we could look back at this again and learn and grow. And I hope, and what has gotten me through this horrific year is the strength I find in my friends and my family and other professionals that say, you know what, these images are going to mean more in the future to the families, survivors, and to the community, and to the professionals that work through it than they do now. Right now, everybody's dealing with trying to understand why. And we may never have an answer to that, but I hope these images will bring some comfort or hope for a resolution. Boy, let's see. I guess along those lines, what I was really hoping to talk about and didn't really know how to begin bringing a point is dealing with, as professional journalists and as student journalists, that as student journalists, which I hope and pray one day you'll never have to do this assignment or assignments like this, or experience assignments like this, but unfortunately they're a small fraction of the jobs that we are required to do. But I think one of the things I wanted to bring attention to is the hope that we as journalism, whether we're instructors, students, endowed professionals. What I'd like to bring to this is the acknowledgement of some of the problems that come after we cover events like this. Anybody recognize the term post-traumatic stress disorder? How many of us work out? Oh, Tommy, don't raise your hand. How many of us? I mean, how many of us really like to work out? I mean, I'm not saying like we're a gym guru or a nut, but like to say, okay, you know what? Salad would go good with my steak. I think a lot of us in society tend to worry about our physical bodies. Especially as we get older, students, we sort of feel more invulnerable. We certainly, as we get older, I know I've certainly started to consider my health, my physical health. The one thing that we don't do, and I know I didn't do until now, was find concern or find even reasons to worry about my own mental health. Before this, it was sort of like, oh, this is part of the job. I can take care of this. I can cover, a funeral one day and make the images I have to make because I'm doing my job. And then I take that and I shove it real far down. Okay, and then just shove it even further down. But I think until now, I don't think I really thought about my own mental well-being. And I think as student journalists, I think that's something that I would be raising my hand in class and ask, how do we cover these things? How do we cover funerals, both ethically and emotionally? How do we separate ourselves from a camera and the human side of that? I've learned a long time ago, well, actually I thought I learned a long time ago that listening to other professionals say, you know what, I get into situations like that that are very emotional, very painful to look at, and for some reason I find myself behind the camera and I use the camera almost as a shield. And they sort of are able to detach themselves from the scene because of that function of focus, f-stops, composition, etc. And until recently, I basically have been forced to say, you know what, that's not true. I don't find that, for me, at all the situation I feel. I feel just the opposite. I don't feel as though I am protected by my camera. I feel like I am sort of anything that I see through my viewfinder, whatever lens I have, is almost a magnification, a microscope, a telescope, I guess. And when I point that camera, whether in a terrible situation like Columbine or at a sporting event, it certainly feels more and more like a telescope, almost a telephoto lens to one's soul who I'm photographing. I mean, to me, everything outside stops with the exception of that one frame. Whatever's in that little camera frame, that's what I feel now. That's what I see. That's what I hear. And that's what I imagine myself in. And that's been the hardest thing, is going from using a camera as a shield to picking up a camera and unfortunately feeling the pain involved in taking the image. Again, I mean, there's a lot of us on the staff of 19 that have come together several times to talk about our disorders, personal disorders. To me, a lack of sleep at night, a long day, aggravated stomach. I mean, boy, I could chalk that up. Okay, stressful day at the office. Check. Okay. Shouldn't eat that chili. Check. Bad. All these symptoms that revolve around post-traumatic stress disorder. I was having checks for. Not me. Not me. Not me. Not me. Not me. And the reality is I had to go back now. When I sat down with other photographers and talked about it, and I'm kind of going, okay, that's me. Wait, that's me too. Okay, all of the above, and it was painful because I realized, geez, I'm vulnerable. And what was even more painful for me was realizing how much more sensitive I became with the camera. And I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, it's kind of hard. I think everybody has to find their own sort of volume for sensitivity when they do their job. I certainly don't want to preach, turn it off when you pick up a camera, turn it off when you pick up a pad and a pencil. Just the opposite. I mean, turn it on until it hurts, and then turn it up just a notch more. Because, again, that's just a fraction of what the people you're interviewing or the people you're photographing have gone through. And if if that little bit more pain makes me to be a more sensitive and better photographer, hopefully more sensitive, not so much worried about better, I've certainly had to decide to endure that. Again, it's fractions. The disorders I've dealt with personally, and I don't think, being raised in a Hispanic family, I don't think we've ever I don't think we've ever discussed mental health, mental well-being. I mean, it's not any great, taboo subject. I just think it never came up. I think we, as a Hispanic family, I mean, we shared everything, and we still share everything. And we, my mom was my shrink. My brother's my shrink. Well, I'm my brother's shrink. Well, sometimes. I mean, I think among the family, we shared a lot of information that helped us get through a lot of different things, and we do that now. And I know that specifically now, I mean, there's been a lot of things that I've gone through and I've shared directly with my brother, who is also a professional journalist. But to get back to the discussion of talking to counselors or shrinks or whatever terminology you want to use, it was really difficult for me to try and decide to go see one. And it took a lot of prodding from friends and family to say, you know what, you're not doing okay, And I'm like, what do you mean I'm not doing okay? Hey, I got you're okay. I'm sorry, I know this is, unfortunately, it took nearly 11 months for me to realize that something like this certainly had that lasting effect, and it still does. And so, after my first of several sessions, before the anniversary that just passed this past April, it's all right now to say, yeah, I talked to somebody about this, and I suggest that if anybody ever deals with stories, hopefully not of this magnitude or any things like this, that it's not a taboo to go and talk to somebody. It should be something you discuss in class. Firefighters and police officers and medical personnel, they all have counselors at the call. They all wear pagers. They all have priests. They all have religious icons that are there just waiting, just to talk. I think in journalism, I think we need in class, as well as in the industry, to say, you know what, here's some numbers. If for any reason you have a problem, call this number. And as a student journalist, I think that it should certainly be a pop quiz. Okay, what is post-traumatic stress disorder? I know I hated pop quizzes, but my sister usually got me through them. Yeah, I really think it should be something looked into. I mean, I really think it should be looked into as part of a curriculum. I guess I should get off that soapbox, but any questions? I'd like to answer anything and everything. Go ahead, please.
Where else have you shown this show?
I'm really nervous, so that's why I'm sort of like all over the place. But I've showed this. I was asked to show this similar image or the similar slideshow to a press club in Ventura, California, for one of their awards banquets. Predominantly, when we show this show, it's usually to other journalism departments or other professional journalist associations, predominantly.
One follow-up.
Sure, go ahead.
When you submitted the show,
Sorry.
did it go with sound or just picture only?
Well, at first it was just, at first we put together on staff just pictures only. And then we decided to go, our director of photography, Janet Reeves, heard this piece of music that is pretty commonly associated with the Holocaust. And when she heard this music, immediately associated it with the tragedy at Columbine. And I guess she did a good job. Go ahead, please.
How did people react to the cameras, and did you ask for consent before taking some of the pictures, or how did you address?
Well, I think in the first day of the actual event, I think in the total chaos, I don't think anybody really realized we were there. I think they were so, taken in their own sort of little world, with their own, being reunited with parents, family, children, wounded. I don't think a lot of them paid attention for a long time that we were there. And for us, I think a lot of us chose to stay a little bit further back than we normally would. And look, there's equipment that allows us to do that and try and be as intrusive as possible. And then there are other times when for example, there's an image that I made. The newspaper used it and named it United in Prayer. It's almost like what they call a Hail Mary photo. You sort of raise your camera up above and shoot down. And I started to shoot that image with sort of a wide angle lens. And then as I got closer, instead of, it was a really bizarre scenario. As I got closer and the kids were united and praying and singing hymns, one would sing a song, the verses would stop, and then another person would sing, and they'd raise their hands up. And instead of feeling as though I was being pushed out, I found myself almost sucked in. And students were basically, pushing me, offering, here's, come get closer, come in. And before I knew it, I was almost center of the group. And it was very powerful for me, both emotionally and spiritually. So I think different people, well, to go back to your question, I think different people reacted differently to cameras. Where you saw a majority of the images, it was a park called Clement Park in Littleton, Colorado, which is very nearby to the high school. Actually, students parked their cars and then would walk to the high school. And I think not only did Littleton, but Denver, Colorado, all over the country, people came by the thousands to lay flowers, to share their thoughts and prayers and emotions. And unfortunately, I think in the end, some national media came in, some international media came in. I think in the end, it started to be too much. And I think when that began to I think be more relevant, I think that's when that sort of scene died down.
Consent, you had a question about
Getting consent. When I make an image, and I can only basically speak for myself, I try to be as inconspicuous as possible, which is kind of hard for me because I'm sort of clumsy and big and loud. But I honestly, I try to make images that that I don't have a hand in. In other words, if I see somebody reacting to something, I'll make an image and I'll go up after that scenario has changed or ended and ask, can I get your name? My name. I introduced myself. My name is Rodolfo Gonzalez. I'm with the Rocky Mountain News. I took a picture. We're here covering Clement Park. Do you mind if I get your name or if we use a photo? And I think 9.9 times out of 10, they're very grateful to give me their names. And that 0.10, that point of the public that didn't want their names weren't upset. They just decided, you know what? You can use the picture, but I don't need or want the recognition for being here. So, but I think every photographer, had different reactions, and every photographer interacted differently. Student goes first. No, I'm sorry. They're paid. Okay.
don't know the student, but it's a yes or no question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Were all of the images in the slideshow published?
You know what? I think almost 99% of them were. To be honest with you, I was looking at them, and I've seen them so much that it's hard for me to remember whether they were published or not. But I think a lot of them, I'd like to say almost all of them, were published.
But it was a composite of many photographers' work, or those
Correct. No. The images that you saw were a composite of the 15 photographers that covered the scene over the past year. And obviously, you notice that not all the images were taken with that day or within the first few days. Some of the images were in recovery, trying to get back into normalcy, I guess, of life. And it's been really challenging, not just for them, but for us. Go ahead.
Were there some photographs that were too graphic, and what helped you decide to use those?
Well, there's a lot of photographs that I thought personally were too graphic. For me, personally, as a photojournalist, I mean, I kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, and I was usually always pretty liberal and fought for images for their impact and their power and the power to stir emotions, and that's sort of what I do, and that's what I'd like to do. But yeah, I thought was pretty traumatic images on there, and they were published as well. I think to do anything but publish some of those images would have done the story, would have done the community, and I think the victims injustice. And it's taken me a long time to admit that. I mean, I'm sorry.
With that many photographers, when it first happened, was there any sense of strategy about how people deploy to cover it, or is it random?
No, it's chaos. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that we had. I say chaos, but in reality, I think what we did was we tried. As we learned, as the story unfolded, and as we learned the severity, we just sent as many people as we could to the different locations. And if I arrived somewhere and I saw another photographer there that I worked with, I made it a point to say, hey, you okay? Okay, you're fine. You have this. I'll go somewhere else, and sort of just strategize that way so that we could cover as many things as possible. Go ahead.
What kind of reactions did you get to photographs from the people who were involved afterwards?
There have been a lot of mixed reactions, to be honest with you. I made one of the more graphic images that day from a helicopter. This was a photograph taken of Daniel Robaugh. He was a 15-year-old freshman. He was on his way out of the cafeteria with soda pop can, and he was allegedly one of the first victims shot by Harris and Klebel. He was the young man that was laying on the sidewalk, green shirt, with the other students sort of cowering behind a car with an officer offering some sort of protection. From the helicopter, with a long lens, it was pretty difficult to sort of figure out what it is I was seeing and what it is I saw. Now, I don't want to make that sound like any kind of excuse, but at the same time, as we're in a helicopter passing over and over, at first, I told a pilot of the helicopter, I think there's somebody laying, I think there's a victim on the sidewalk, and that's the adrenaline talking. And as I focused, as I focused and as we circled in another pattern, I came back and I couldn't believe it, but my mind, and myself, I'm telling myself, no, that can't be it. That's not true. That's got to be, it looks like book bags. Yeah, that's what it is. And I was telling myself, I was lying to myself, basically. And like I said, it's taken a long time to come to these conclusions. But, there were a lot of images that I made and other photographers made that stirred incredible reactions, especially the next day. That image was published the next morning in the morning paper, And Daniel's mother, Sue Patron, pardon me, that's how she found out her son was a victim. I mean, she did not know. A lot of people didn't know. There's a lot of missing students. The law enforcement agencies could not go in and identify bodies because of the booby traps feared left by Klebold and Harris. So it wasn't until that morning, after obviously incredible, agonizing, time for that family, not hearing, not knowing, praying and hoping for the best. But it was that next morning that they were able. She recognized her son right away, and she knew. And she was. I mean, it wasn't until days later when we spoke with her. I say spoke, the newspaper spoke with her. It wasn't until days later that, okay, we realized the father was just outraged, but the mother was found comfort and peace of mind. She knew where her son was, and she knew that her son died instantly, quickly, and peacefully, didn't suffer. And she carried that clipping in the newspaper for quite a while. I guess, I don't know, hopefully as a reference point or as a way or something to gather strength from. I don't know. I haven't had the courage yet to speak to her, but I'm working on it. So yeah, there was a lot of graphic images, and there was a lot of outrage, and there's a lot of, but I think that the outrage, I think there was less outrage, to be honest with you, than there were just shock and emotion.
Find yourself in situations like Columbine or any other disaster competing with a television camera?
No, that would be competing with my brother.
The reason I ask is you had an angle. I remember seeing on CNN the guy throwing his leg over the when he was trying to get out the window.
Patrick Ireland.
There was an image that was in the slideshow that was basically from the same angle, but there was nobody in the window.
Yeah, I mean,
Same building, same window.
I mean, when I was in the helicopter in a pattern, there was a pattern of 8 other helicopters and planes, all TV. I think I was the only still photographer up in a helicopter at the time. And to be honest with you, I think by the time Patrick Ireland escaped or actually was rescued, we had to head back to the airport to refuel. And so I didn't make an image of that. But yeah, I mean, the reality is newspapers compete with TV stations all the time.
Find yourself bumping other cameras to get a better angle for shot?
Well, in certain scenarios, I mean, I think, yeah, we all compete in certain scenarios, in certain proximities. I mean, can you imagine moving this guy out of the way? Well, and vice versa. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, I think there is competitive nature between TV and stills. I think they're solely two different mediums. So his shot that he needs for video and my shot I need for stills is completely different. And again, in my market, I know there's a lot. The professional photographers and photojournalists in my market, video and still, we work very well together. And although we're competitive, I mean, this industry is too small. This industry is too self-serving for individual photographers to be cutthroat about it. It's too small, and it will come back to you. Go ahead.
Am I correct in some clarification? Did you say at one point in time that you felt like you didn't want to be connected to your work at Columbine?
Yes, that's correct. Well, I just don't. I mean, I've been a photojournalist on the staff of a newspaper for the past 10 years, and I think some of my favorite work came as a student here at SAC, and that's not just stuff that was published. I mean, and also had some of my favorite work as a member of the San Antonio Light staff. That comes not from awards, but coming from people I met, coming from the images I was able to make, and who I learned from, and how I learned it. I mean, this type of event and this kind of award is very. I mean, the award is very prestigious. Please, I mean, it is something that, as students and as journalists, we all at one time dream of winning the Pulitzer in one way or another. But personally, you know, the word Columbine for a long time, and I say this after several sessions of therapy, would strike fear in me. You know, it's very paralyzing because it was something that, not that I didn't want to be associated with, but it's something that I was trying to block out, get past, you know, bury, shove, hide, do whatever I could to not think about. And at the time when I saw Irene last summer, I mean, that was, you know, one of those times in my, I guess, biggest attempt of denial. But I mean, I'm very, I tell you what, I am incredibly proud to have worked with the photographers that I have worked in the 10 years that I've been a photojournalist. And the staff at the Rocky Mountain News is equal to any of the other staffs I've worked with, almost. But again, I mean, my fear is I want to be remembered. I mean, I'd like to be remembered for, I mean, other images as well, not just, you know, death and grief. Go ahead.
I imagine it's going to be a long process for not only you, but all the other people on the staff and paper to sort of digest the experience and get it behind you. So I think it probably would mix the emotions that you accepted the curator.
Yeah.
Anybody else have problems?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, you know, I hate to use the cliche of bittersweet, but I kind of, as a photojournalist, sort of lost words to explain any other kind of way to accept that. I mean, you know, when I fantasized about winning the Pulitzer, I envisioned champagne, I envisioned hugs, I envisioned pats on the back, and a lot of, and you see that in other newsrooms all over the country. You know, Washington Post won feature photography for the coverage of Kosovo refugees, and they were happy. You know, fortunately for them, Kosovo isn't in their backyard and isn't the story they're still covering. For us in Denver, and Littleton is, you know, I think just a suburb of Denver. I mean, it's that close. For us, it was an ongoing story. It still is an ongoing story, and believe me, there was no champagne. There was a lot of tears. I wish they would have been tears of joy. And like I said, other people celebrated with champagne. I mean, we specifically decided. I mean, it was a moment of silence that we shared with each other, and remembering what we covered, and paying respect to that, and paying respect to those, you know, who suffered the most. So I wish it would have been a much more joyous occasion.
Did anybody on the staff consider themselves like a native of the area? I'm just wondering about the difference there, for instance.
I think
You had worked for a San Antonio paper and had to work, that happened in San Antonio, God forbid. It might even be worse for you.
Oh yes, I mean I mean the staff of the Rocky Mountain News. I mean not just the photo staff, but the reporters. There are quite a few natives that, you know, grew up there. There were you know, reporters that had students that went to school there. I mean, so this was a horrific event. Whether I think you were a native or not, I think being a native just magnified that. Yeah, if this happened here in San Antonio and I was on staff at the Express News, I mean, yeah, I can't. I mean, I think it would be, like you say, probably even worse. Anybody else? I'm looking back at Irene, and she's sort of like shrugging at me. I'm sure that Mr. Hunt, should I announce it? Okay, please do.
I don't know Rodolfo very well. This is our second Pulitzer Prize winner.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did. I think I did.
The other one took night classes here with Jerry Townsend, and we didn't know he was a former student until he came to speak at this lecture series and told us that he had learned his photography at San Antonio College.
I tell you what, I mean, I wish I could have started this all over, because I would have started it first with, you know, all the thanks I have for everybody. right off the bat, my mom, my sister, my brother, all my family, and then all the photographers that I grew up with, and Irene, Roberta Barnes, former San Antonio Light photographer, Tommy Holgren, former San Antonio Light photographer. I mean, these are all incredible people. San Antonio Community College, incredible foundation of resources and just drive. Doug Doherty, incredible. I mean, these are all people that, without them, without one of them, without any of them, I would never have been able to be or do what I do. And I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for everybody.